What's up guys, also Footballtalk here, wrapping up week 2 of this series where I go through each of the 8 NFL divisions and give every single team their time to shine, and we've arrived at the AFC East. Anybody who's listening so far knows the drill. I run through each of the draft picks for these 32 franchises, deliver short scouting reports, discuss the state of the rosters, and how those new pieces fit within the puzzle that is the team building. I've watched all but like 20 players that ended up getting drafted. I'll happily tell you that I didn't get to those few names and just share a few pointers from gathering information, while I picked up some notes from my actual evals to talk about those in more educated fashion. I have much more detailed write-ups on nearly 140 prospects, along with my big draft recap, and a piece on the biggest impact on drafted free agents over on my site hellofootballtalk.com if you want to check that out after this video. If you still have any further questions, you can drop those down in the comment section, and I'll happily try to answer them or just engage in the discussion with you. As always, let me quickly ask you to let me know if you enjoy the analysis by hitting the thumbs up button, and if you haven't done so yet, subscribing to the channel and clicking on the little bell. Then you also get notifications on whenever I release more stuff. Greatly appreciate all of that. Without further ado, here are my thoughts on the AFC East, starting off with the Buffalo Bills, who traded back a couple of times to make the first pick of the second round, 33rd overall, with Keon Coleman, wide receiver Florida State. Later in the second, 60th overall, Cole Bishop, safety Utah. 3rd round, 95th overall, Dwayne Carter, interior D lineman out of Duke. 4th round, 128th overall, Ray Davis, running back Kentucky. 3 5th rounders, 141st overall, Cedric Van Prank Ranger, interior O-lineman Georgia. 160th overall, Edefon Wolfosio, linebacker Washington, and 168th overall, Javon Solomon, edge Troy. A couple of 6th rounders, 204th overall, Talon Grable, offensive tackle UCF, and 219th overall, Daquan Hardy, cornerback Penn State. And then finally in the 7th rounds, 221st overall, Travis Clayton, the offensive lineman from the International Pathway Program from the UK. Let's begin with the FSU receiver Keon Coleman. And one of the funny things to me throughout this draft was the backlash the Bills got on social media for giving the play of Goliath and the Chiefs the chance to take Texas speedster wide receiver Xavier Worthy, along with dropping on one more spot to the top of day 2, as the Panthers didn't want to be left out in the first round, when really they moved up by about a full round from the 4th and the 7th each, along with another 59 slots up from pick 200, and I still believe they got a more useful wide receiver than Worthy. So this is a big piece in how the Bills put together one of the stronger draft classes across the NFL, and of course the idea of not wanting to trade with an arch rival when there's no obvious surplus value selection to make is just ridiculous. Now for Coleman, he's 6'3", 215 pounds with instant explosion off the line, impressive ability to D and re-accelerate, can use his physicality to gain positioning on routes, snatches the ball above his head, while he made a bunch of acrobatic grabs in college, but also gives you the consistency with just a 4% career drop rate. And then he has rare movement skills with the ball in his hands for a guy's size, being able to start and stop to navigate around defenders. That's why he was even the All-ACC punt returner as well as a receiver. He did run a 4.61 at the combine, and there are questions about his long speeds to actually detach from his man on vertical routes. And while he was dealing with a foot injury last season, the skills of the position in terms of being able to use tempo, be crisp out of his breaks, and add nuance to his routes are lacking to some degree. The contested catch rate wasn't really where you'd like it to be for the type of profile last season, but that also was in part due to his quarterback not necessarily placing the ball where he was at a benefit versus his defender. The Bills have said that they plan to line him up at the X, so on the line on the backside of the formation. I thought he was better suited to be used as a big slot, since we haven't seen him run a very complete route tree, but he does have the physical skills to defeat press, and there'll simply be a learning curve for him. With Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Mac Hollins, last year's 5th round pick Justin Shorter, depending on if they make it through roster cuts, Chase Claypool and/or KJ Hamler, and assigned last week the inconsistent Marcus Valdes-Scantling as a flanker. I don't love that and would have preferred more of a technician at the position, like Adonai Mitchell from Texas, but I do like that they acquired extra picks and still got the guy they fell in love with, and who can blame them for what we've seen in clips swirling around so far. With their original 2nd rounder, they addressed the biggest position of need defensively, with Cole Bishop, the Utah safety. Whether it's charging up the alley or lining up on the edge of the box, his ability to track the ball, lock out against blockers, and then his tackling in the open field are outstanding for safety. Has experience covering tight ends in man, playing split field or single high safety coverages, while being an active communicator and directing traffic for a strong Utes defense, where his ability to squeeze down the routes in front of him and shut down yards after catch opportunities really stands out. And he's a highly effective blitzer, especially coming off the edge, who has the wiggle to get around blockers and gets his arms up as he closes in on the quarterback. There's no special burst or long speed to hang with those speedy slot receivers in man coverage, with the quick twitch to not lose phase, and he occasionally gets tunnel vision for the quarterback and can be at fault for vacating his area for the purpose of making plays. At 206 pounds, Bishop ran a 4.45 at the combine and had a really good workout all around. To go with the tape, that was just about as good as any safety in this class. So I thought this was appropriate value for a team that just lost Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, who the defense ran through over the last 7 years. They did bring in Taylor Rapp last offseason, now signed Mike Edwards, and maybe we do see DeMar Hamlin actually play more than a couple of snaps in a game this year. But Bishop's presence on the back end and versatility will be key to rebuild under Sean McDermott, which they've had a defensive identity along with the crazy playmaking by Josh Allen for such a long time now. Next up, Dwayne Carter, the Duke interior D lineman, someone whose tape I loved in 2022, but unfortunately dropped off a little bit this past season. Hard-nosed run defender with the shock in his hands to regularly jerk back the pads and helmet of blockers in the run game. Generally feels when blockers lean or get too aggressive into contact and arm overs them to place himself in the gap. And then he can really condense the pocket, rushing from different alignments, paired with a nice inside swim or spin to counter that. He could do a little bit of a better job of keeping the outside arm free in the run game generally, and doesn't have a ton of range as a tackler. And then he's not the most twitched up pass rusher, with tightness in his ankles, and once again, the pressure numbers were down significantly in 2023. So if he wasn't 100% healthy maybe, that's something the Bills would know rather than me. They lost Jordan Phillips and Poona Ford in free agency, so they needed to add another physical presence on the interior. I think in more of a gap control front, this fit makes a lot of sense, and I had him as a 4th rounder, so not too far off, and there was a run on the position early on day 2. Bringing us to day 3 actually, with Ray Davis in the 4th round, the Kentucky running back, my number 5 back in this entire class. An instinctive natural runner with advanced vision, understanding for fronts, and reactionary skills for a college back, being able to pace his runs accordingly. Throws in foot fakes, slices through one shoulder of defenders with the way he can reduce his frame, and he finishes his runs by dropping his pads onto guys to plow forward. Has dependable hands and a plan of what to do with it once it's secure as a receiver, while the eye flashes of him are winning down the field. Doesn't wow you with sudden bursts or dynamic moves in the open field, and in pass pro he tends to sit back too much rather than taking charge of blitzes early on. But at 5'9", 215 pounds, he has the mass and leverage to improve in that capacity, and he racked up way more explosive plays than people might think. Incredible story, which you can read up on in detail if you Google it, especially on The Athletic, there's a great piece on it. Being part of the foster care system with his parents being in prison, moving places and schools multiple times, before turning himself into an All-SEC player. I think he actually leads Buffalo in touches this season over James Cook, who has dropped some key passes and generally has been kinda up and down at times. Let's go a little bit quick on the rest of the day 3 guys, starting with Cedric Van Prank Ranger, the Georgia center, healthy dude at the pivot for the Bulldogs, with that compact build, but quick out of his stance and is able to get to his landmarks in wide zone, or as a lead block on wraparound pulls in impressive fashion, brings some heavy hands in the wide base to take control of interior rushes and pass pro, while being able to square up blitzing linebackers at a high rate. Does get pretty top heavy in the run game and can lose his balance against crafty NFL D linemen who can use that against him. Not the most athletic reactionary mover, you want him to work more in that phone booth setting in protection, and only his 31.5-inch arms. But with Buffalo moving on from center Mitch Morse, I think there's an outside chance the rookie ends up starting for them as they continue transitioning to more of a downhill rushing attack. He'll be battling with Connor McGowan for that gig, and while he didn't play guard at all at Georgia, I think he could moonlight in those spots when needed, and then potentially take over in 2025. Next up we got the Washington linebacker, Edefon Ulofoshio, under-recruited 6th-year senior whose tape last season was up there with the best in the class. Explosive lateral mover, tracking plays out to the perimeter, continues to fight off contact in order to pursue the ball all over the field, and missed less than 8% of attempted tackles in his career with that large tackling radius. And then he's kind of a savant in pass coverage, being able to squeeze down windows, be physical with targets in his vicinity, and drive on the ball as soon as the quarterback initiates the throwing motion. The big story of course with him is that he suffered multiple season-ending injuries. He'll also get caught gambling just trying to shoot a gap, and there are moments where he can get tunnel vision as his own defender still, as he stares down the quarterback in anticipation of what the offense is trying to do. but a solidly built, explosive athlete who tested above the 90th percentile almost across the board at the combine, and he fits in very well with the Bills' value at the position. Obviously not starting over Matt Milano or Terrell Bernard, but this gives them insurance if one of them gets hurt that they didn't really have last season, and somebody who's gonna give you his all in special teams. Then the other front 7 defender that they got in Javon Solomon, the edge out of Troy, awesome value for Buffalo here, as they moved down 5 spots with Green Bay to still get the better overall player than what the Packers got, along with adding a late 6th rounder that they ultimately used on Daquan Hardy, who also like a lot and we'll get to in a minute. Starting off with Solomon though, a little undersized for the edge, and we didn't see him line up on the outside of the tackle, anchoring down against drive blocks actually because of the front structure for Troy. And he doesn't have the longest strides to win up the arc consistently, but he can create plenty of knockback with those 11-inch hands. His wrestling background shows up in his balance and core strength as a run defender, along with the feel and ability to snatch cloth to pull blockers off himself, has a loose lower body and excels at flipping his hips at the top of the rush, paired with those two-handed side swipes, chop rips, etc., and he continues to work those to come free. I had him as a fringe top 100 prospect personally, and I love how he helps rebuild the depth on the edge for Buffalo. And Daquan Hardy, the Penn State corner, only 5'9", 180 pounds, but consistently plays above his weight as the quasi-starter in the slot for the Nittany Lions these last couple of years. Beautiful defense inside fade routes, great short area burst to click and closing routes and off coverage, shows a good understanding of when to pass off routes in zone, and keeps the quarterback's eyes later in the down, but also looks comfortable attacking through the hands of the intended target with his back to the ball. Has those shorter arms and small hands, where he struggles to disengage in the run game when bigger bodies are able to latch into his frame. Clever route runners can get him turned around at times with unorthodox footwork, and he could do a better job of plastering receivers late in the down. They've locked up Teron Johnson as a borderline all-pro nickel for them, but getting a backup like this late in the 5th round with an elite combat performance is excellent. And then the 2 offensive linemen, Talon Grable out of UCF, good urgency out of his stance, can unlock those hips into contact in the run game with good agility and dexterity to secure and sustain against moving targets, offers an explosive first kick into his pass sets, and generally well coordinated in his footwork, along with patient hands, being able to slide in front of twist action or pick up slot blitzes with relative ease. Doesn't provide a lot of displacement in the run game, and tends to stop his feet once the initial momentum is gone, carries his hands low and comes in wide with them as a pass protector, regularly allowing pass rushers to establish first meaningful contact, and his upper and lower body can be a little segmented at the top of the rush or against crossface moves. He'll need to clean that up in the limited penalties, but Spencer Brown and Lyle Collins have been right tackles only, and I think this projects well as a swing option generally for them, as those 2 guys are on the last years of their deals. And Travis Clayton from the International Pathway program, obviously don't have any on-field exposure to him. I've seen his name pop up on the NFL UK page, and they do a great job now of getting guys to that level athletically where the league is interested in them. Only tried out football for the first time in 2019 before having a 10-week crash course into the game at IMG Academy, so to speak. Plus he ran a 4.81 at 301 pounds to pair with his 35-inch arms, so securing that mold of clay with your final pick, I don't hate it. Reflecting on this class as a whole, I thought this was top 5 across the league in terms of talent brought in and how well they attacked areas of need whilst finding good value. Coleman wouldn't have been the receiver I'd target at the top of the second, but they did add extra capital, which allowed them to get quality contributors on day 3 potentially. We can't really count the Stephon Diggs trade as part of this because the relationship had soured, but I understand that how well that group contributes this season will be in the minds of fans and people outside the building. I think they found themselves impact starters at safety and running back, taking advantage of those positions being viewed as lower priority when they needed to address them. They restocked depth in the trenches on both sides of the ball throughout day 3, along with Carter late on day 2. Really, other than Clayton, who I simply don't have any tape on, from round 4 onwards, came at surplus value, while the first 3 were almost just a couple of spots early and fit what they wanted to bring in. So this to me could be one of the better classes of the Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott era. Next up though, the Miami Dolphins, who finally put together a more standard-sized draft class after back-to-back years without a first rounder and just 4 picks total. They went in the first round 21st overall Chop Robinson, edge out of Penn State, second round 55th overall Patrick Paul, offensive tackle Houston, 4th round 120th overall Jalen Wright, running back Tennessee, 5th round 158th overall Mohamed Kamara, edge Colorado State, couple of 6th rounders, 184th overall Malik Washington, wide receiver Virginia, and 198th overall Patrick McMorris, safety Cal, And finally in the 7th round, 241st overall, Taj Washington, wide receiver USC. So with Chop in the first, the Penn State edge, incredible first step and ability to threaten the corner with speed and bend, leading to some instant wins where tackles just aren't able to keep up with him, snatches and lifts the outside hand of those guys in order to create softer angles for himself, and throws in some deadly up and unders once he gets those guys to overset against his speed. And I think he's an underrated run defender who plays with good sink in his lower body and arm extension to hold his ground, but then his ability to flatten and chase the ball down the line from left unblocked on the backside really pops. He does need to do a better job of not getting his body turned in the run game, and generally needs to sink his upper and lower half better. And as a pass rusher, he doesn't yet string together moves in a comprehensive fashion or reads pass sets particularly well, being able to quickly get to a secondary move if he's cut off initially. I really thought Miami would go O-line at the top, but both Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb are coming off season-ending injuries, and you need to be able to bring in guys fresh to rush the passer for a team that plays with the lead and in the heat a lot. They also added veteran Shaq Barrett for the rookie to learn from, and he'll get a chance to show early on how quickly the light bulb comes on for him. Then you got a guy who will directly match up in practice with Chubb in the Houston tackle Patrick Paul, 6'7", 325 pounds, with a pterodactyl-like 86-inch wingspan, has definitely worked on his flexibility in his lower half, does well to wall off bodies on the second level especially, and he's able to steer defenders with those long limbs, and then he's impressively light feet for a guy's size, and has worked hard on being able to sink his hips and keep a flat back as a pass protector, staying balanced and utilizing the arm length to pick up secondary loopers and twists. He comes in super wide with those arms and can't really apply force in the run game because of it, with a pretty high rate of negatively graded reps, and then it's just too segmented in terms of his feet and upper body, lacking technical soundness and refined footwork, where he heavily relied on his physical gifts to get the job done in college. But he saw those issues show up in ugly ways during Senior Bowl practices, and I think it'll be even more apparent against pros. That's why I had him all the way down as my 14th ranked tackle, which even in a draft where those guys came off the ball like crazy, this was early for me. He's not starting over to Ron Armstead or Austin Jackson I think, but I hope it develops and can step into the blind side a year from now, while probably seeing some action when there's injury eventually, since the only tackle on the roster with any NFL experience otherwise is Kendall Lamb. Miami didn't own a pick in the 3rd or 4th round originally, but shipped the 3rd rounder next year to Philadelphia to select the speedy volunteer back here in Jalen Wright, who has instant explosiveness once the ball touches his hands, can turn off either foot without losing time and alter his footwork on the fly pretty well with the burst to win the corner. Tells a different story with his shoulders than his feet, in order to make it tough for defenders to square him up, capable of shrugging off loose wraps, and then has legit home run speed at 4.38, which what really stands out, and credit here to Brandon Angelo, who has his own site, Angelo Analysis I believe, who talked about his real acceleration ability, how that is such a rare skill, where he just gets out of a tackle and then is able to get back to full speed quickly. Wright also has pretty soft hands and ability to extend for the ball, but it's what he provides as a pass protector, being able to transfer force from the ground up, keeping his head on a swivel and picking up guys across the formation that really gives him value on 3rd downs. Really tough evaluation due to the insanely soft box counts in that spread out Tennessee offense, where more often than not he had a +1 in terms of bodies than the defense having an extra defender down there. He's more of a tight-hipped runner who presents long legs to attack for tacklers and prefers to work around creases when it's not clear rather than stick his foot in the ground and try to knife through. So I question if they really needed to tap into next year's pool of draft resources to get one more speed back when he already had Raheem Mostert coming off a career year and Devon A-Chain setting NFL records, averaging nearly 8 yards per carry as a rookie. Without injury, I don't see him getting a ton of work, but he could have a couple of big games when he does get extended run, and we've seen those two guys ahead of him be kind of in and out of the lineup. Then in round 5, Mo Camara, the Colorado State edge, another guy on the small end for the position at 6'1", 245 pounds with only 32.5-inch arms, prefers to dip underneath blocks to create angles to the ball in the run game. His 3rd and 4th step to get to the top of the rush isn't as impressive as his initial get-off, and he's not super twitchy to make up for his lack of length, but he does have some of the best bend of this entire class, and is an expert at attacking the outside hand of tackles, especially with the rip move, can soften the corner for himself by jabbing inside initially, and does really well to angle his rushes, converting speed to power. And while his ability to lock out and maintain vision on the ball isn't great as I mentioned against the run, he does come in with those hands ready to strike, and consistently wins the leverage battle, along with fighting hard to work off blocks and get to the ball. So I love getting him a good 50 spots later than where I thought he should have gone, and now he gets to learn from Shaq Barrett, who was a pretty fitting player comp in the way those two guys win, along with being another former Colorado State standout. He's pretty pro ready, and his snaps early in the season, if those two starters from last year aren't ready, could be close to chop who they got in the first round. Jumping ahead one pick to the Cal safety Patrick McMorris, who was the first non-Canadian player I didn't get to watch as the draft went on. Standout at San Diego State, where he made first team All-Mountain West each of the last 2 years, with big-time ball production before transferring to Cal last year. Good size and overall coverage numbers as I looked into the PFF archive, but a 23% missed tackle rate last season, for a guy expected to contribute primarily on special teams, is a bit worrisome. I thought he was willing to stick his face in the fan and generally saw plays develop well from watching the Hula Bowl, but that's about all I can tell you. Although I really like the two receivers they brought in late, with Malik and Taj Washington. For Malik from Virginia, more of a stocky build paired with lightning quick feet make it tough to glean where he wants to go with his routes, sudden his movements to evade contact, but packs the hand swipes and play strength to win through it. Excellent spatial awareness, catches pretty much everything thrown his way, and then he had a 63% contested catch rate last season, despite only being 5'9". And then because he's built so low to the ground, the ability to make sharp cuts in the open field and bounce off hits really stands out. Probably a slot only, with a very limited catch radius, lacks the top gear to detach from guys vertically, and he had a significant fumbling history leading up to his one big breakout season at Virginia. And then Taj from USC, similar height but nearly 20 pounds lighter, relies more on his ability to elude ancillary zone defenders, create separation by gliding through cuts, and get on top of guys. Only dropped 1 of 60 catchable targets last season, has incredible ball tracking skills over either shoulder, and generally soft hands. And when he's one-on-one with a safety after catching the ball, he can make that guy look foolish by crossing him up. Similarly to Malik, the range of where he can place the ball for him isn't very large. He doesn't out-nudge defenders or addresses the football at its highest point consistently, and whether it's being able to break tackles or latch and sustain blocks in the run game, the physicality is missing for this guy. Miami did sign Odell Beckham Jr. just like a week after the draft, when I was really high on Malik as an upgrade at the number 3 spot over Braxton Berrios, but I think he still gets on the field quite a bit with his yards after catch skills, while Taj's vertical prowess will be taken advantage of more occasionally. But really like that duo for them as late as they got them, and generally what they also did with Mo Camara in the 5th. So I was big on what they did late. Unfortunately, I wasn't as big on what we saw prior to that. I thought they should have gone Graham Barton in the first round. The last of the big 6 tackles was taken one spot before them, but maybe they could have jumped the Steelers at pick 20 to get Joe Fatano from Washington, who would have been an awesome addition with his flexibility for an O-line that has needed to shuffle around guys quite a bit. And then they could have still gotten someone like Marshall Nealand or Chris Braswell in the 2nd round. I was a lot low on Patrick Paul in that spot, and I definitely questioned the necessity of getting another speed back in Jalen Wright with what they already had in place. So not sure this perfectly matches with what they've told us otherwise this offseason, moving on from a bunch of starters and actually bringing in even older veterans as they try to load up for one more run with 2 on the 5th-year option before they have a big decision to make on him contract-wise. So maybe they look at this as kind of the best of both worlds as they prepare for an even bigger transition next offseason with high ceiling but more so developmental players. Which has us moving on to a team that is definitely more so in the rebuilding phase in the New England Patriots, who third overall got the quarterback of the future in Drake May from North Carolina, and they went heavy offense after that. 2nd round 37th overall Jalen Polk, wide receiver Washington, 3rd round 68th overall Caden Wallace, offensive tackle Penn State, a couple of 4th rounders, Leighton Robinson, interior O-lineman out of Texas A&M, and 110th overall Javon Baker, wide receiver UCF, 2 6th rounders, 180th overall Marcellus DL, cornerback South Carolina, and 193rd overall Joe Milton III, quarterback Tennessee, and then in the 7th round, 231st overall, Jaheim Bell, tight end Florida State. Starting with Drake at number 3 of course. If you watched my NFC East video earlier in the week, you know that I thought May was clearly QB2 in this class over LSU's Jaden Daniels, who Washington took a spot earlier, so I think New England got themselves someone who can be a legit franchise quarterback. Highly impressive arm whether it comes to velocity, range, touch on the field, or the ability to deliver passes without a clean platform to release from. Very aggressive decision maker, not afraid of attacking tight windows, but he'll also extensively pick apart static zone coverage looks. And then he's light on his feet to move around inside the pocket, along with being decisive and quite elusive when he decides to take off as a runner. His 42 conversions on 3rd and 4th down combined over the last 2 seasons were more than any of these other quarterbacks in the class. The line I used in my scouting report, which you can read up on in more detail as part of my quarterback rankings at hellosforfootballtalk.com, can be a little bit robotic with his mechanics, with an error in the system where he locks out that front foot and doesn't always get himself aligned to the target, which sees his ball placement suffer as a result of that. And he definitely has some hero ball tendencies, trying to make the impossible happen, not getting to his check down a bit quicker, and going airborne as a runner. I think the accuracy and decision making concerns were clearly overblown. Make can quickly clean up some of those things with the right coaching, and if he develops that trust again with a solid pocket, and receivers that are actually in the spot he expects him to be. I think Drake sits initially with Jacoby Brissett in the building, but that's a great guy to grow behind, and New England clearly made it a priority to add pieces around him as we go on here. As in the second round, they got him Jalen Polk, the Washington wide receiver. In my day 2 mock draft, I had New England taking Georgia's Lamb McConkey at pick 34, but they did move down 3 spots with the Chargers to select another receiver, along with moving up another 27 towards the top of the 4th round. So while I believe there's a definite teardrop, since I look at Polk as more of a fringe 2nd to 3rd rounder, compared to Ladd in the fringe of 1st to 2nd, they did use that other selection they acquired on Javon Baker from UCF, who we'll get to in a little bit, and that's just 2 spots lower than Polk in my positional rankings. As for the UW wideout, the type of receiver that May needed and wanted is someone who kind of does everything well and consistently is friendly to his quarterback, really good at establishing advantageous positions early in the route, and then has the body control and strong hands to attack the ball even if there's contact at the catch point, effective blocker with his angles and the way he latches his hands, and if you put the ball in his hands, he turns through the correct shoulder and doesn't shy away from taking his head down into contact. Not the most precise route runner, running off his brakes a little bit too much, and he isn't going to offer you a whole lot of dynamic moves or quick bursts to threaten defenses with his yards after catch skills, but I think really helpful for a young quarterback. He may never be a legit number 1, but a supercharged number 2 in the mold of Chris Godwin, who doesn't shy away from going over the middle of the field and hauls in everything he plays in his vicinity. Then you get a couple of pieces on the O-line, and Caden Wallace from Penn State, the offensive tackle. Definitely a little early for me because he'll swing his arms and dip his head into contact in the run game, and he regularly oversets versus speed off the edge because he doesn't quite trust his foot quickness, while his hands slide up pretty high in pass pro. But he does showcase impressive body control and moving blocks with a broad frame and pretty long arms. When he's first to fit a hand inside the chest of pass rushers, they're typically getting locked up, and he displays a good understanding for the depth of the pocket, routinely making defenders overrun the arc to the quarterback, which is how he only gave up 1 sack and QB hit each on just over 350 pass blocking snaps last season, despite some quality competition in the Big Ten. So I think they looked at this as more of a safe pick to get someone who can start early, even if the upside is somewhat capped. What I just don't love is that they don't have a solution at left tackle, and now Walls will most likely be asked to flip over there after solely playing on the right side in college, since he just extended Michael Onwenu there. Getting the ball out a little bit quicker will be key with those types of tackles, but not really how May used to play at UNC. And in the 4th round, the Texas A&M guard, Layden Robinson, a guy that was highly regarded a couple of years ago, and especially coming out of high school, but has been sort of forgotten. Road great in the run game, who can uproot D tackles on down blocks or help drive somebody into the lap of a linebacker on double teams. Yet he has the hip mobility to get his lower body around guys in wide zone concepts, a wall of guys on the 2nd level. And in pass pro, he has those vice grips to snatch up interior rushers, with busy eyes to ID twist action, and the flexibility to redirect and pick up guys who have momentum. His weight shifts too far out in front, trying to burr defenders in the run game, and he just whiffs every once in a while because of it, while his hands sit low as a pass protector, and he tends to be at the end of his reach too much if he doesn't have a guy right in front of him, where savvy interior guys can lift those arms up and create issues for him. But other than Antonio Mafi, who I really liked coming out of UCLA last year as a day 3 pick, and did get thrown out in the fire, but definitely struggled, they didn't really have anybody in the roster who can jump in at guard. I think Layden has started trades and maybe replaces Cole Strange on the left side in 2025, after he provides quality insurance for injury this season. And then Javon Baker, the UCF wide receiver who I already mentioned, along with May at the top, my 2 favorite picks they made. Baker has legit juice off the line to put defenders on their heels, and because of the nature of the UCF offense, getting the cushion on the outside, he just eats on deep outs and stuff like that. His ability to attack the ball in the air, win with late hands, turn and roll away from defenders trying to dislodge the ball is superb. And then his skills to change up stride frequency, throw in head fakes, and get around defenders with the ball in his hands stands out, along with good ball security fundamentals. Not always the most precise on the intermediate level, has to become more diligent with setting up double moves, and he doesn't have that final gear to truly pull away from coverage. And then he has some clap attack tendencies, leading to too many drops on what should be routine catches, This is the ball winner this offense didn't have yet. Kendrick Bourne most likely starts at the X, along with Polk as a flanker and Pop Douglas in the slot. But I believe we see Baker on the field a lot this year, and he's a long-term starter if you move on from Bourne next offseason. Absolutely love this pick for them. Just quickly on the 3 other guys he brought in late: Marcellus Dial, South Carolina, long physical corner, who can be pesky with not allowing receivers to get off contact, and plays the pocket of guys effectively. Does well to manage that space to receivers in off alignment and squeeze down on routes with appropriate timing, and consistently plays with extension for blocks, maintaining contained responsibility. While he's able to bother receivers early in the route development, he'll need to learn when he has to let go so NFL refs don't throw the flag on him, especially when he stabs at guys shortly before the breakpoint, and doesn't have much of a playmaking gene, recognizing opportunities to locate and attack the ball in the air after turning his back to the quarterback. He had stepped for a secondary that suddenly beyond the starting 3 has very little behind it, anticipating to play more man again this season with Christian Gonzalez back healthy in year 2. Bringing us to the other quarterback they drafted out of Tennessee in Joe Milton. Funnily enough, this was the pick the Patriots got back from Jacksonville in exchange for former first-round quarterback Mac Jones. Obviously slightly different profiles coming out of college. Milton is an absolute bazooka for an arm, where he can drill 18-yard comebacks at the opposite sideline or let it fly 70 yards without a perfect platform to release from. When he sees it, he's willing to hang in and kill defenses against the blitz, because he can still hit all areas of the field even if he can't step into the throw, has the size and 4.6 speed to break away from guys trying to corral him. But he needs to calibrate that arm, gets locked in the primary in an offense that has typically gotten that guy open at a high rate, needs to speed up his process and not invite pressure as much, as well as trust in the structure of the pocket. But as a developmental number 3, I posted a funny meme on the quarterback room now with how Billy Zappi sticks out along those big powerful passes that they have there. And then in the 7th round, Jaheim Bell, the versatile tight end from Florida State, really interesting weapon, who played H-back, big slot, and even halfback at times between South Carolina and Florida State. As a blocker, he's at his best taking charge of defenders when he tries to get the ball to the perimeter, and as a receiver, glides through cuts with 4.6 speed, extends well for the ball, and then he's a monster after the catch when you look at the numbers, throwing out stiff arms and running over guys at full speed. With him, it's just really tough to project what he can be at the next level, because obviously he's not lining up on the ball and driving edge defenders away from the action, pretty rounded in his breaks and drifts away from some catches at times, but I don't fully know if he'll just get open within the structure of an offense. But the Pats get a similar player here to what they had a couple of years ago in John Smith, as someone who can play at H-back and you put the ball in his hands in creative ways, definitely worth it in the 7th round. So I think they did the right thing here, getting the quarterback up top in May, if they don't throw him out there right away, as you figure out how those pieces around him will all fit together, and if they can really protect him. In terms of the receivers here in Polk and Baker, if you consider where they got them collectively, it evens out and they present skill sets that could match really well with what they need around the young passer. I'm not sure if they found a solution at left tackle with Wallace, as someone who can really be a long-term contributor, since they have Marcon Wayno locked up. Some solid shots to take on day 3 otherwise. I thought they did fine here. If May lives up to what I believe he can be, and those receivers help get him there, the rest really doesn't matter a whole lot, even if other than that, nothing that really blew me away here. But solid work by de facto GM Elliot Wolf in his first year supposedly calling the shots as they enter the Gerard Mayo era. I'm interested now in how quickly offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt can establish the run game and bring along those young guys. That brings us to the final team for today, the New York Jets, who in the first round, 11th overall, selected Olu Fashanu, offensive tackle Penn State, 3rd round, 65th overall, Malachi Corley, wide receiver Western Kentucky, 4th round, 134th overall, Braylon Allen, running back Wisconsin, then 3 guys in the 5th round, all 6 picks apart from each other, 171st Jordan Travis, quarterback Florida State, 2 picks later Isaiah Davis, running back South Dakota State, and then 3 picks after that, Qantas Stiggers, the cornerback from the Toronto Argonauts from the Canadian Football League, which is kind of a curious situation there, which I got to later. And then in the 7th round, 257th overall, Jalen Key, the safety out of Alabama, Mr. Irrelevant. Let's start with Olu at the top. I think greatly overthought during this process, in part due to a couple of bad reps in the Ohio State game last year. Hasn't shown great improvement in the run game, where he lacks some consistent temperament, and because he has weirdly small hands, he may not be able to sustain blocks as well as others. And he gets a little too antsy at times, overextending, rather than allowing rushers to close that space and fitting into them once they're close enough. But I think this guy has the traits to become an elite pass protector on the blind side, with the quick feet and hands to take control of reps early. Already displays independent hand usage to bait and level rushers, has improved his alertness for the action up front, and a natural bender in order to swallow power. And he does have some really good reps in the run game, executing scoop blocks on the backside of outside zone, gliding up to linebackers of combos, etc. That's why I had him as my number 5 overall prospect, one spot ahead of Joe Alt actually from Notre Dame, whose tape in the run game is better, but I feel better about Olu's profile as a pass protector, going up against NFL competition. I look at him having the upside of someone like Texans Pro Bowler Larry Tunsil. The interesting thing on the Jets now is that they signed free agent Tyron Smith on an incentive-laden contract and traded for Morgan Moses as a stalwart from the Ravens. I think Fashanu competes on the right side with Moses, and if Tyron gets hurt, he flips over to his best spot. At worst, he may be the best backup in the league initially, and the long-term solution on the blind side. Skipping the second round due to the trade for Aaron Rodgers last year, at the top of the third, they select Malachi Corley, the Western Kentucky wide receiver. For moving up 7 spots to select him, the Jets sent the 5th rounder to the Panthers, but as we saw, the whole front office and coaching staff is excited for this dude. 5'11", 210-pound bundle of dynamite filled with anger, which shows up in a Deebo Samuel-like skill set after the catch, where he just refuses to go down, but also some real wiggle to him to make people miss. You also see that physicality as a route runner, creating separation as guys try to slide in front of him, along with the awareness for how to adjust his routes based on coverage. And he doesn't allow suboptimal ball placement to slow him down much at all, with some impressive grabs and passes sliding behind him. There's not much nuance to his routes overall, and you saw him round off breaks regularly, with a bunch of his production coming on little stick routes, crossers, and different variations of screen passes, and he can get a little loose with protecting the ball as he fights for extra yardage. Interesting case study as almost a running back lineup in the slot with the things he was asked to do for the Hilltoppers offense. However, does that mean he can't do more traditional wide receiver things? I think he's someone you want in a more defined role, but with Aaron Rodgers' ability to get the ball quickly, let him go to work, bring some attitude to that offense, and let him be an extension of the run game, I think it makes a lot of sense to complement the quick twitch route running of Garrett Wilson and the ball winning down the field ability of Mike Williams. They drafted a couple of running backs only about 30 picks apart from each other in the 4th and 5th round, starting with Braylon Allen from Wisconsin. A 20-year-old back with that sledgehammer build at 6'1", 235 pounds, and having been very productive at Wisconsin. When he can hit the hole at full speed, Allen would split those creases between bodies on the 2nd and 3rd level in a hurry, while using his off arm really well and throwing out some excellent spin moves to bounce off contact. And then he just caught a career-high 28 passes last season with no issues in terms of his hands. I just don't think his pads and hips are always aligned to utilize the power in his lower body optimally. He's really slow to re-accelerate, even if he does get away from tacklers, no real suddenness to work around bodies, has rarely been deployed in pass pro and needs to embrace the ball better in traffic. So this was always more where I personally saw him, compared to some guys saying he's a day 2 guy. And then Isaiah Davis from South Dakota State in the 5th round, someone I think maximizes his ability a lot more, as someone who was even more productive, spearheading a Jackrabbits program that just won back-to-back national titles in the FCS. Also well sized at 6 foot 220 pounds, great patience and vision to find open lanes, excels at manipulating second level defenders and setting up runs conceptually, great peripheral vision as he gets through the line of scrimmage, with the ability to string together different moves and packs a devastating stiff arm. And he's steady Eddie at taking on blitzes with a wide base, flat back and good bend in his knees, as well as making something happen of the opportunities he received in the pass game. Definitely more so builds up speed and power, while it's a lot easier to get him to the ground if you get initial contact on him early, had the luxury of running behind the dominant SDSU O-line, and he does allow passes to get closer to his frame than he should. I was definitely surprised to see New York double down at the running back position behind Breece Hall, who is in line for a true breakout season that he'll hopefully be healthy throughout for. But Dalvin Cook last year was such a disappointment for people that believed he still had juice left to squeeze, and now they add 2 more young power backs along with Izzy Abanikanda trying to become a factor when injury free in year 2. Between those 2 guys they went Jordan Travis, the Florida State quarterback, and the Jets clearly liked him quite a bit since they sent a couple of 6th rounders to Philly for the selection. Like a machine as a thrower with that super consistent delivery, willing to release the ball early and test some tight windows over the middle, with some beautifully layered throws, very quick decision maker and accurate distributor who likes to spread the field and consistently has a plan on 3rd downs, and he has a knack for extending plays, really slippery trying to get a hand on him, and incredibly tough when he decides to actually take off. Doesn't have top tier arm strength to push the ball outside the numbers. When the pocket collapses around him, that lack of size and want to escape do show up, and he has a bad tendency of falling away even when he doesn't have to, which can lead to suboptimal ball placement. I hated seeing him go down with the broken ankle, and the Seminoles miss out on a chance to make it to the college football playoff after an undefeated season. Really like Travis as a backup in the league, who I thought in the right circumstances could start for stretches, but now in New York starts behind Rodgers and long-term backup Tyrod Taylor. I think he could have gone around earlier also, and maybe one day he gets to start there as they're in another transition period once Rodgers leaves. That brings us to cornerback Quantas Stiggers, who is a unique case for a player who already was a pro in the Canadian Football League and actually received Rookie of the Year honors. Yet because he didn't play college football but instead started in fan-controlled football, a live streaming indoor league, he was eligible to enter this NFL draft. Just like the big British Columbia offensive tackle the Lions took around earlier, I didn't have access to all 22 for Stiggers, but I did watch him compete during East-West Shrine practices and definitely liked what I saw. Challenging receivers at the line of scrimmage, aggressively working back down the stem when receivers snapped off routes against him, showed the long speed to hang with guys down the field, and had a couple of impressive PBUs, locating and getting his hands on the ball. Unless you consider Isaiah Oliver a guy who plays inside and out, since he's played his best at nickel, Stiggers is really only competing with Brandon Eccles for the primary backup outside corner spots. Before this exercise, I didn't actually know how shallow that group is in New York, past the two excellent starters. Bringing us to another defensive back in the 7th round in Jalen Key from Alabama. Someone who, despite people usually having a tough time getting on the field as part of a loaded secondary in Tuscaloosa, did log nearly 600 snaps on defense this past year after transferring over from UAB when he cracked the starting lineup in his 4th season there. Solid size at 6'1", nearly 210 pounds, plays under good control against the run, staying true to his leverage and being a face-up tackler, smart defender in zone coverage, being able to decipher information, and we saw him play more man during Shrine Bowl practices. He looked very easy in his pedal and drive to counter the breaks of tight ends, and while he did lose his fair share of reps, his physicality in coverage was apparent. Already turned 24 years old before we got to the draft, ran a 4.6 flat, has limited ball production, so he's someone you're primarily getting for special teams, with how high the coaching staffs at both schools spoke of his football character. So all in all, I really liked Olu at the top, then moving back a spot and still being mature, understanding how much they got killed up front last season, with the prospects of putting a 41-year-old quarterback coming off a torn Achilles behind that unit. I think Cole as a number 3 receiver and run after catch specialist is a good complement to that offense. I didn't really get the 2 backs early on day 3. I think they came at appropriate values, but not necessarily guys that excel in that offense that wants to run a lot of outside zone with Breece Hall. And I thought there were opportunities to help out your team otherwise, at least getting one veteran in there instead. And number 3 quarterback with prospects of future opportunities once Rodgers decides to retire, sure. The CFL corner Stiggers I can't fully speak on, but replenishing depth with a super competitive kid, I don't mind that at all. And then a primary special team from Bama. The trade up in the 3rd when you already didn't have a 2nd rounder due to the Rodgers trade, the 2 very similar backs, when you had some other areas of need to address. I think they could have used the resources a little bit better here, even though I don't dislike any of those players. Let's wrap up the AFC East now, however, as we stack up what those 4 teams were able to do against each other. Bills Mafia at the top, as I discussed, one of my favorite classes overall across the NFL. Thought they did a great job of addressing areas where they lost long-term contributors, while still finding good value, especially on day 3. Made sure to add extra darts to throw at players. Could legitimately get 4 or 5 starters out of this by 2025, which is kinda crazy. Just an excellent job at a time where people were hopping off the Buffalo bandwagon, considering they are clearly in transition mode with all the guys that left the building, but add some pieces here to bridge that gap and start that second push they're trying to make now with an elite quarterback at the helm. They should still be treated as the favorites for the division, even if they may bring along some new faces. I'll put Miami 2nd here, but it was really close between them and the Patriots. I didn't love what they did in the middle rounds, with a developmental tackle prospect and another running back who wins with explosiveness when you needed to find some immediate contributors. I'm good with Chop Robinson in a vacuum as a high ceiling edge rusher, and then I love what they did on day 3 to put him up here. Mo Camara as someone I believe can legitimately be an impact pass rusher as a 5th rounder, and the 2 Washingtons at receiver who could present long-term answers if they can't pay everybody in the room down the line. Patriots at 3, love me and how they surrounded him with pass catches throughout day 2 and 3. I'm dubious around Caden Wallace potentially being a fix at left tackle over an extended period of time. and thought he was definitely early as part of a loaded tackle class. Javon Baker, the UCF wideout, was one of my favorite picks of the entire draft though, and I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up being a 1,000-yard receiver at some point during his rookie deal, paired with the aggressive UNC passer. If they found themselves a legit franchise quarterback in May and added the pieces to get him to that point here, that new regime will look great. And finally, the Jets at the bottom. I just explained some of my concerns or more so questions about how they approach this beyond the Olo pick at 11. Huge season for Gang Green, and they could have probably used another versatile piece in the secondary instead of 2 more running backs. Still don't love what they have at tight end. They did get a couple of interesting undrafted free agents actually, but I don't count those here. Nothing egregious or players I thought went way too early, just not my favorite class as a whole. But that's gonna do it. Thank you so much for watching another episode of this divisional draft and roster review series. I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen or listened to so far, as we're not the halfway mark. If you have, please consider clicking the like button and subscribing if this is your first time for one of these. Sharing these videos with a friend or two is always greatly appreciated as well. Next week we'll head down south with a video on the NFC and AFC yet again. In the meantime, you can listen to the other editions already on my channel. Feel free to let me know your thoughts and shoot any questions my way down in the comments. You can check out all my other work at Footballtalk.com and stay up to date with everything I do if you want to follow me on social media. All of that's down below in the video description. Back in next week on Tuesday most likely. So until then, see you later. Peace!